G'day, it's Greg Clark from the Centre for Public Christianity, and we've been talking about happiness with Brian Rosner after the recent Sydney conference on the topic. Brian, you mentioned earlier that the conference was largely organised by Buddhist groups. Let's explore Buddhist sort of thinking on happiness a little bit. My understanding is that the Buddha taught that really you found happiness ultimately by disengaging with the world to some extent. Is that your understanding?
Yes, I think that came through. The approach of the Buddhist speakers to things like materialism was simply to desire less. And I think the Christian view would be a bit different to that. Rather than thinking that we need to sort of squash desire, the Christian approach would be to redirect desire to something better. Christians, along with Jews, believe that the world's a good thing and it was made by God, so all those natural desires we have for looking after the world, for going bushwalking, for having relationships, for enjoying things like sex and food and so on. They're all good things which Christians would affirm. And beyond that, a Christian would say that there's something even better to engage in. Jesus talked about, for example, not seeking material things, running after what you're going to wear and what you're going to eat and where you're going to live, which is the Gentile approach as he depicted it, those who don't know God. He said rather than doing that, what we should do is seek first his kingdom and righteousness. So a re-education of desire is probably the Christian view, such that there's a full engagement with life, the messiness of life, the difficulties, the heartbreaks of life, but nonetheless the joys of life are experienced more fully, a Christian would say, by taking a full part.
Buddhism, at least a version of Buddhism, does seem to be very popular in the public mind at the moment. When you're going to go on a spiritual quest, it's often taking a sort of Buddhist shape for today's sort of city dwellers in particular. Why do you think it's so attractive to people?
I think it does offer a life that has a kind of area of tranquility at least. And many people do feel the rat race, as we call it, and feel there's no time for friends and the other things they'd like to do. Many people have at least considered a sea change, completely pulling out of the kind of lifestyle that most people say in a city like Sydney would be pursuing. And Buddhism, I think, is attractive in the sense that it offers you a way of coping with that busy lifestyle by having some moments of meditation, I guess.
Do you think Christianity has an equivalent to that kind of tranquility that people are searching for? How would you describe the Christian version of that tranquil quest to get out of the rat race?
I think we need to take seriously that the New Testament does tell us that we can have peace with God, and a peace that, as one of the authors puts it, that passes understanding. So one of the speakers at the conference was a celebrity neurosurgeon by the name of Dr. Charlie Teo, and he wrote a book called Your Life in His Hands. In one sense, I think part of the Christian answer is to say that that's a good way to think about life, but not so much putting our life in Charlie Teo's hands, but putting our life in our Creator and Redeemer's hands. So having something beyond yourself is part of the solution to happiness.
You're listening to the vodcast for the Centre for Public Christianity. For more great content, why not subscribe at publicchristianity.org.
Part of the problem with seeking happiness is most of us realise that we have these selfish desires and we put ourselves before others as a kind of instinctive drive. Christians call that sin. And the solution to that is by no means easy, but one of the ways of dealing with sin that Christianity does offer is to find forgiveness with the one who created us, and also to be free from the way that sin binds us. Many of us look at addicts in our society with genuine pity, and we think how terrible it would be to have no control over your own desires and will, and to be driven to such an extent that it has a harmful effect on the rest of our lives. Well, in one sense, addicts are a picture of what all of us are stuck with. The volume's turned up with an addict, but the reality is that all of us are suffering from sin. Jesus talked about sin as the one who sins is a slave of sin. Very unflattering picture. So what Christian faith offers is not just forgiveness from sin, but release from sin. And interestingly, the release is in the form of a new slavery. It's a form of me not serving just my own desires, but serving God which involves serving others.
Okay, I think we're edging towards a sort of Christian understanding of happiness here. Like if you had to sort of make a poster that had a summary paragraph on what the Christian understanding of happiness is, and thinking back to what we said earlier about unpacking the term a bit, what would you say? What's that paragraph that explains what Christian understanding of happiness really is all about?
I think one of the reasons I'm keen to explore further what the Christian faith offers in terms of this theme, which I think is a legitimate question for society to be asking, is that it does have the resources to deal with it in a profound and genuinely helpful way. One of the things Christian faith does is to recognise the problem, which is, as I've been saying, this notion of sin and rebellion and turning aside and in a sense enthroning ourselves in our lives in a way that is ultimately unhelpful and destructive. The other thing that Christian faith brings to the table is the notions, I would say, of joy and of contentment. Historically, Christians have been a joyful people. I think contentment is something that all of us realise is just so attractive. The idea of having some equilibrium between our desires and their fulfilment.
So finally, if Christians have been involved in the planning of the conference and sort of been on stage more often, like, how would it have been different? How would the average person, the average Sydney-sider, have noticed a difference?
I think, I hope at least, that if Christians had organised the Happiness Conference, there would have been a lot of things the same. We would have dealt with the subjects of education and work and family and finances. All those things would have been on the table. But Christians would have recognised at a more profound level the depths of the problem. The problem isn't with our circumstances, the problem isn't with our focus, the problem is with our hearts. And to get to the depths of the problem is something that I think Christian faith can do.